I think we got two then. All right. Welcome to the lunch pail half hour. My lunch pail's on order. We're blue collar and we just do the work, no excuses. Susan says it's working. That's because we're so techie. Only the third time's the charm that we got the sound to work. That's great. I'm going to get it. If this doesn't pan out, I'm going and going to be IT. All right. So for the lunch pail half hour today, if you don't know what a lunch pail is, Google it. It's what used to bring to work when I worked construction back in the day. I actually only did that a few times. We'd always go drive to takeout somewhere. We'd get something to eat. We weren't organized enough to make our food ahead of time. Okay, so I think our question today we have is, what challenge would you do if you weren't afraid? We got two words. That's one of them. What challenge would you take on? What type of event if you weren't afraid of not finishing? For me, you know what? I took on everything that scares the crap out of me. The only thing I might do if I knew I could finish for sure would be free solo. Free solo. Because I don't really want to try that right now because I am not that good of a rock climber. And if you frickin' fall, you die. If you haven't watched the movie Free Solo, I've watched that scene at the end probably 10 times where he does that climb at the end up, what's our name? But anyway, up the face, down there in Yosemite. It's just amazing. But anyway, so does anybody have what they would do if they weren't afraid? How about you, Jesse? Woo woo. The captain. Yeah, I'm the lunch pail guy. I'm the lunch pail. I guess I'd be like the foreman. My dad had me in charge of a job, and I really didn't know what I was doing when I was like 18 years old. And he said, "Bill, call me at lunch. Call me when there's a break. Call me at your break. Go to the gas." We didn't have cell phones back then, even though I'm only 30. But still, cell phones haven't been along that long. And he would say, and I would write up my questions for this job of what I had to do. And then I'd ask him at like 10 o'clock, and then I'd call him. Then I had to call him at noon and ask him what I had to do. And the carpenters were on the job. He said, "Bill, don't say anything to the carpenters because nobody can read your mind. They don't know what you're thinking." And so at the end of the job, I would call my dad twice a day and know what to do. I was rewiring some little house. And they told my dad, "Your son doesn't talk much, but he's really smart." Because I never talked. Anyway, El Capitan, yeah. Oh yeah, the El Capitan, that's the name of that's what I would do if I knew I couldn't fail. I would free solo like Alex Honnold did, El Capitan. But that's what I'm encouraging you, like, to take on challenges that you would do if you couldn't fail. Of course, if you fall and you die, that might be a hard one to take on, unless you're really, really good at rock climbing, which I'm not. I'm kind of a really low-level rock climber. But anyway, does anybody have anything they would take on if they knew they couldn't fail? 3 people in the audience. Woo, woo. I think that ties our record. Woo, woo. 4. 5. Holy cows. The word's getting out that I would summit El Capitan, which this picture back here is Half Dome, and my goal is to climb, and I've already tried twice, but to climb the Snake Dyke route up this part of Half Dome, which scares the crap out of you too, but you're not on the face, and you still are. You're still, you need somebody above you who knows how to climb because you're still like hooked together you're still roped together, and it's huge. We're still at the record of 5 people. So did anybody else have a challenge they would take on that they want to share, that if they took this and they knew they couldn't fail, they would take it on? Don't everybody jump at once to say something. Jesse, anything for you? So what else would I do if I couldn't fail? If I couldn't fail, another one I really want to just try because I'm swimming. Jesse would become an ultra athlete. I think you're in pretty damn good shape. Oh, Susan said an Ironman. Susan, you're in good enough shape to take on an Ironman. You could definitely do that. Susan's in great shape. I see her at the gym all the time. Yeah, she's hardcore. Woo woo, hardcore. Woo woo. So an Ironman, that's a great goal. My first Ironman, I signed up. I was drinking back in the day. I know I don't seem like the type, but back in my 20s, I was a big partier, and I remember thinking, and I'd been a high school runner. I was pretty good, like county runner, in high school. Got 5th in the 880. That's still like a heyday thing for me, but in the county. But when and then after I got out, I got into construction and just, kind of forgot about running and got into drinking. And I remember thinking I was on a bar stool thinking that, we would talk, a lot of us. I had several other guys from high school I would hang out with, and we would say, tomorrow we start training again, tomorrow. And tomorrow never came, but I watched the Ironman on TV in back in the day when it was first starting on Wide World of Sports, and I thought that would really be cool if I could do that someday. And so when I quit drinking, I started running, and then I signed up for my first Ironman in Canada, and I didn't even know how to swim. I knew how to swim across the pool like one time. I'd only had swimming like lessons like when I was like 10 or 11 years old. So I knew how, if I swam in the pool or anywhere, when I got over my head, I would tread for 2 seconds and then swim back in. So, so to do an Ironman was incredible. I had to learn to swim, like real swimming. And, but it was huge. And I took on the one in Canada. And so I remember in the first year I did it was 105 degrees. I didn't even know it could be 105 degrees in Canada. And I didn't make it. I didn't finish because, some guy on the run told me what the conditions were for heat stroke. He said, and he started telling me all these, it was like a doctor, and he started telling me all that. And then I said, I think I'm having heat stroke because I have all that guy's conditions. So anyway, I ended up not finishing my first Ironman. So, and I had bought a shirt and all this stuff, and I refused to wear it till I finished it. And the next year I came back and finished. I learned more what I'm doing, but so it wasn't a big deal that I didn't finish the first year. I think that would be a great one for you, Susan. Huge, huge. Thank you. She says I'm her inspiration. So now I've done 9 Ironmans. I've done a triple Ironman. Yeah, I was kind of getting to be an Ironmanaholic. I would go up there and just try and train for that Canadian Ironman and try and make it to Hawaii, and I never made it. You know what I mean? I just always the time got faster. I started out, if you were 40 years old and you did it, you could make you only had to do a 12-hour Ironman. By the time I was 40, I was down to 11:30, but you had to do 11-hour Ironman, under 11. So it kept getting faster. And I think it's under 10 now. So, okay, Jesse's got a question. What inspires me to never quit? And I do end up quitting sometimes, a lot. Yeah, actually, a lot of times. Usually, my rule is if I think I'm gonna die, I usually quit. If it's die, I remember the first time I'd made almost everything, and the first time I tried the English Channel, I was throwing up for hours and hours, and I was so weak because I said I'm just not going to quit. I'm just going to keep swimming, and it was really really rough conditions, like really rough. And to this day, it's the roughest I've ever swam. And I started throwing up, and I threw up for hours. And I got so weak, I'm just like, I was like, just my head was above the water. And so much for my thinking, like, I'm gonna die before I quit. Because then I said, better if I like quit before I die and then come back the next year. But I really put a lot of pride in that. You really got to put me really far out there before I quit. You know what I mean? It's like I got to be pretty wiped out before I quit. So, but what inspires me, I think, on the quitting thing for me was that I always quit when I was like, when I was in high school. I tried out for the ninth grade. What did I try out for? The ninth grade baseball team. First, it was the basketball team. I got cut from the basketball team. I'd never grown. I was like 5'2", and I grew like a foot as a sophomore in high school. I grew to like 6'2", my height now, but I was still 5'2", and I wasn't that good of a basketball player. Like, you got to be at 5'2". So I got cut from the ninth grade team, and I remember I ran out of the gym crying. I'd never been cut before, and then I went out for baseball, and I got cut again. And I couldn't even make the, and in track, they didn't cut, but if you didn't make the top three, I couldn't make the top three in like the 13:20, which was 3 laps around the track. So I ended up quitting because I couldn't make it. I wasn't able to run, and there were 3 guys faster than me. And then I remember, and so it was really a rough time in junior high, getting cut from all those teams. And as a sophomore in high school, I went out for soccer. Never played soccer. We didn't have used soccer back then. And I went out for soccer because they didn't cut. And then I grew as a junior, and my buddy was running, and he was great. And I went out for a run with him during the summer, and in Tahoe, I remember we ran like an hour, and I had to take a bus back. I was in such bad shape. He ran out and back, and I had to take a bus back from where we ran to because I was wiped out. But it inspired me to start training, and I went out for track that year, and cross country and track the next year, and I'm telling you, that quitting and how crappy it made me feel made me say I'm never quitting again in my life. And I just don't quit now anymore. And there was also a guy who went out for the baseball team, and I got cut and he got cut, and everybody who got cut with me, we never played baseball again, right? Well, that one guy practiced all summer and instead of playing soccer, and he went back out for the baseball team and made it. So that was a lasting impression on me. Like, don't freaking quit, Does anybody else got anything they want to share that if they didn't quit? Yes, I love Susan. Ironman, that was huge for me. That when I finally did make it, I was tearing up. I actually teared up a lot when I did a half Ironman because that was such a big distance. Now they call it a 70.3, but that was such a huge accomplishment from coming off the bar stool and doing it, And I think a lot of us think like, if we don't finish, people are going to really care. Like, nobody cares. We care. There might be some people who give us the business who are, they're asses. But, they might give you the business, but, you can't worry about that. what I learned, I was so embarrassed about quitting, not finishing Arrowhead. And that's the race in Minnesota where I try and pull a sled 135 miles with 40-pound sled with my survival gear. And the first year I made it, I didn't want to quit, man, for nothing. And I made it out to like 70 something miles. My hands were frozen, because I had the wrong gloves. It was minus 35 degrees. I'd never been in that type of temperature. I was out there for like a day, in this cold with gloves that didn't work. Hacks. Susan, I don't believe in hacks, man. You got to sit in the sauna right now and in the cold. She said, what are the hacks to deal with extreme heat and cold? You get in, like in the bay, it's like you go down there and I swim in the bay. When I was training to do the thing in the snow, because when I went out to Minnesota the first time, after that minus 35 year, I had a job and everything, so I could only go out there like a few days ahead of time, take off. And it was too extreme to go from here where it's 60 degrees or 70 degrees in the Bay Area and then go to minus 35. That's a shock to the system. So I went up and I found a guy who had a cool, an ice box, like he had where they cut up meat. So, a butcher shop in the middle of this field up near Santa Rosa, and he had he had this ice box in the where he kept his meat. And so I went in like a big freezer in the middle of this field. And so I found this guy on the yellow page in the yellow pages. Said, dude, I know, what do you charge for meat? And he was like, so much. And I go, well, what if I pay you $100 so I could train in your meat locker for a week before I go to, to Minnesota. So I put a stationary bike in his meat locker, and it was like 5 degrees below or 10 degrees. And I'd sit in there, I'd ride my bike, and I needed to keep moving to stay warm. And he would bring people back there and he'd go, look, man, I told you there's a guy back here training. But yeah, so I went in a meat locker to get used to the cold, and it definitely helped. And then when I could take enough time off that I could go to Minnesota for 2 weeks and get used to that cold, that's what I did. Because being in that cold, and I would just go out for short, kind of work my time up as I'd go out into it until I became used to it, And in the desert, we got these saunas, man. And I go into the sauna. I remember when I trained for my first Badwater, I'm walking into the sauna and there's people meditating in there. I'm very competitive, right? And so I'd go like, guy'd have his eye closed and I go, dude, what's your record, man? So I'd try and find out what everybody's record is, how long they could stay in there. And then I eventually had the record. But so, yeah, you get in and you just keep working your way up, in these things. Same with the cold, same with, if you got access to cold water, that's good for the cold too. But I love because you could start out doing the short, triathlons now, the short ones, the sprints, and then you do then a half, and then a Olympic distance, and then a half Ironman, then an Ironman, and you work your way up. But I think it's a great goal. I mean, literally, I can't even tell you how proud I was, more so when I made that half Ironman, because that was such a huge deal to me. And then the Ironman was really big too, but even the half was so extreme because I'd only just gotten off the bar stool like a year earlier, and I hadn't trained at all. So to get in that kind of shape within a year or so I was pretty pumped up, Anybody else got something they would try for if they didn't and knew they couldn't, if they weren't worried about not finishing? Oh, I think I was telling you what I might do too is I might, what I'd like to do is jump in the Farallons. So my friend was one of the first people to swim out there, 28 miles, and it's cold out there, a lot colder than the bay. And, my friend Simon, I just was talking today on the phone. He was one of the first people ever to try it. He was the first person ever to try to swim out there. and he got within a few miles of the island, and he got circled by a great white, and his daughter was on the boat yelling at him to get out because the great white. And I asked him later if he could have made it if that great white didn't circle him. He said the tide was starting to turn. So you only got so long, and then the tide turns, and he'd been swimming for 17 hours. And then, another friend of mine, Kim, she was the first woman to swim from the Farallons into the Golden Gate. She's an amazing person. She did like the seven toughest swims in the world. And then Amy Goobser is the first person ever, and she swam from the Golden Gate. She did Simon's swim like 8 years later, and she made it. And she was like, it was 40, when she made it, it was 43 degrees. You know my record is? 50 degrees. That's the coldest I've ever swam in. I swam in it for an hour. 50 degrees is like unbelievably cold for me. I did that in the Bay this winter. But she swam in 43 degrees, which is crazy. And somebody on the boat even told me that he had been on her crew. And she said when they were going out there, when she was swimming out there, that they passed a dead sea lion with a big shark bite out of it. And they said, should we tell her? They decided not to. Woo, woo. What you don't know can't hurt you. Well, not as bad anyway. And but anyway, so if I thought I could make it, I might even do it someday when I got the courage to do it where I don't even think I can make it, and just swim as long as I can, because I have swam for 16 hours in Lake Tahoe before. So when I get back in shape, I'm pretty tough at swimming for a long period of time. Not fast, just a long period. But anyway, yeah. So that was what I do. And Jesse, you would do an ultra. How long of an ultra, Jesse? A 50K, a 50 miler, 100 miler. My record, what is my record? Jesse has no idea. Well, a 50K is the lowest you could do to start out with, which is like just over a marathon. I mean, I started out with a 50 miler. So I'd done marathons and Ironmans, and I did a 50 miler was my first one that I ever did. Because that seemed like, and it was a big deal when I finished my first 50 miler. It was huge, huge, huge. Yeah, I had just gone through a bankruptcy, and that 50 miler started building my confidence back up because I'd been talking about it for a long time. And I had ego, like I wouldn't finish it, And I was worried what people would think. And then after you go bankrupt, like a big bankruptcy, like I had 13 video stores, and we were one of the top independents in the nation, and you're on the front page of the paper or of the business section, big picture of your store going out of business, in your local town. And you're like, yeah, okay, well, I don't think it's going to be a big deal if I don't finish a 50 miler, So I'll tell you, anybody's afraid of not finishing things, you get a lot more respect out of people just that you get in there and try, that you get in that arena and try. People have a huge respect for that because so many people are afraid to try because they're worried what people would think if they didn't finish. And so, but you know what? I have not finished a lot of these things that, these are the toughest in the world, and I keep going back and trying. But it was like, I got a lot of respect. When I didn't even know how many tries I'd done for Arrowhead out there. If you get a chance to watch the movie Epic Bill, it's kind of it just was on PBS. For a while, it was #1 in the nation on PBS. And it's a story about my life. And we talk. One of the main featured races is the race in International Falls, Arrowhead, which if you want a challenging race, I really, really love that one. And if you want to know where cold was invented, it's northern Minnesota, man. That is cold to the bone is what I felt out there. Cold to the bone. And but yeah, I didn't make it, the first time I tried. I'd like, and I didn't make it again and again and again, and I'd always been pretty good at stuff. And I didn't even know how many. People would always ask me, and I was kind of embarrassed. And I didn't even count. And so I would just say like two or three, just to say something. And this one guy, every year, I'd go back out to it. And this one guy goes, Bill, it seems like it's more than two or three. And I go, well, it's not, dude. It's two or three. Because I was embarrassed. And then I found out. And then the young woman who did my movie, she's the director. She goes, because they filmed me out at International Falls and it was minus 35. These are all kids from LA. They were great. They were troopers, man. They were tough. My nephew was one of them. And it was minus, it hit minus, I think 35 or minus 40. Yeah, minus 40 something. And they came out there and she says, you know what attempt this is, Bill? I go, no, I don't. She goes, it's your 8th attempt. It was my 8th attempt at Arrowhead. And so now if I don't finish anything and I go back and do it again, it's like a badge of honor that I don't quit, So that's what I'm telling you. If you're embarrassed about quitting something and not finishing, that's BS. Because the guys it takes courage to go out there and get in that arena, period. And the ones who are chicken are the ones who sit on their couch and do nothing. And even worse than that are the ones who criticize you, So the person who's in the arena fighting, So yeah, I'm a big fan about being in the arena and fighting. Woo! Anyway, Jesse, Ultra, woo! 50K or 50 miler. Yeah, so as far as getting a strong mind, honestly, it is just doing things over and over and over again. Like they just cranked up the heat in our sauna up there in our sauna here. And I'm like, wow, I'm not very good at this right now because I haven't been in it. So, but you know what I do? I'll be there 6 days a week and I'll get better and better and better. And you get mentally, but the mind is as big of a muscle as the body. It's just the mind and the mental willpower gets as strong as everything. Because I was just talking to Simon, I go, I swam 8 hours in a pool before, staring at the black line for 8 hours. I go, I can't even do 2 hours right now. That black line drives me crazy. Because you know what? Doing boring things it's a mental toughness thing too. You got to be mentally tough to do boring things, and you can build up that muscle that can do boring things over and over and over again. So I got to work on building up my pool swims till I can do an 8 hour again in the pool, because what I was told I got to do, I got to build up my endurance for the English Channel when it's too cold in the bay. When it's 50 degrees, I can't do a 6 hour, 8 hour swim, but I could do it in the pool. And so I got to build that up to where I can do that type of swimming in the pool again. You just reminded me, like, to beat boring things is just like beating anything else. You just keep training at it till you're just strong enough that you can handle the boredom, man. Woo! You guys are great. Anybody got anything else they want to point out that they would take on if they couldn't finish? If they knew they could finish for sure and couldn't fail? Well, we were at a record of 5. 2 people must have had to go to the hospital because they dropped off. I'm sure they weren't bored. All right, so maybe by the next time we're going to do another one next Tuesday. The lunch pail half hour, blue collar. We take on big challenges and we don't quit. Woo, woo. All right. Anybody got any last thing to say? We got 1 minute to go. Woo! Jesse says woo woo too. Team Lunch Pail is getting ready to sign off. Thank you, Jesse. She's very nice of you. Woo woo. Jojo Johan sent something. Woo woo. I think it's something good. But I only have my phone I'm looking at, so it looks small, but I think it's like some sort of a nice symbol. Woo woo, Lunch Pail team sticks together. We take on all the biggest challenges. She sent another one. JoJo Power. Woo woo. All right, thank you guys. We'll talk again next Tuesday. Well, I guess I talk. You guys send texts or whatever they're called. Streamers. You send streamers. All right, we're gonna go. We're gonna sign off. See ya. Bye. Woo. Thanks for the talk.